All right, in today's video, I titled it 5 Reasons Women Do Not Respect Men Who Are Not a Challenge. I'm going to be showing you how to be a challenge in the right way without making it seem like you're trying to give this a lot of effort. And I'm going to be showing you how to do this naturally so that way you can leverage pre-selection tendencies so she feels as if other women are interested in you. Now, this is super important to understand and to master, because all 5 of these points that I documented today on my notebook, what we're doing, or the whole goal of this 24/7 with every point that I'm going to be making, is to give a 24/7 illusion of potential pre-selection. So pre-selection is one of the strongest indicators of attraction that a woman has. It's the strongest attraction mechanism that she can feel towards you, is if she sees proof, or if she feels proof that you maybe have other options, right? It gives her almost like insight into your personality, because she naturally will feel like there's potentially value here. So women want to go where the value is. I'm going to be showing you exactly how to position yourself as a person with a lot of value, so that way she wants to be with you. Now, what keeps me pushing every single day like this is literally seeing guys get amazing transformations. So over the past couple months, we've put over 550 guys into our movement, into our brand new community. And for example, the other day, I just got this inside one of the comments. This guy in our community, he messages and he says, "It's only been 5 days since I joined this community, and I'm getting through the videos learning and aware of exactly what I'm doing was wrong." So see, I think that that's amazing, because men are starting to actually realize that when you acquire new information, okay, and for him this happened in a very short amount of time, just 5 days, when you acquire new information, like I've been showing men inside of this to help them master and understand the language of women. When you acquire new information, you can now make new decisions. And I responded below and I said, "Happy to see your success." When I'm watching guys' comments and their transformations is what actually helps me make these videos. So let's dive into the points. The first reason, number 1, why women do not respect men who are not a challenge is because when demonstrating you are not a challenge, you are neglecting the number 1 biggest attraction mechanism, and that would be pre-selection. So what you're going to notice is pre-selection is the base of all of these points. Okay, it's the main base point. And on top of that, I'm going to show you deeper level ways you can start to leverage this. But what you have to know is, if you are not positioning yourself every step of the way as a challenge, whether that be through how you communicate verbally, okay, if you're able and willing to qualify a woman, and you're willing to verbally express specific traits that you're looking for when dating, all of these things matter. So if a woman sees that you are a challenge, whether that be how you text message, how you communicate, when you're able to see her, okay, having limited time, all of these things are very important. It lets her look at you and say, hey, there's probably value here. Either other women are interested in him and he's probably actively dating, or she's going to sit there and think he has a lot of things going on, whether it be work, whether it be his social life, whether it be his hobbies and interests. There's probably a captivating, amazing life that this man has built for himself, and now she wants to gravitate towards you. So if you are demonstrating that you are not a challenge, you are literally neglecting the number 1 biggest attraction mechanism, and that's pre-selection. This would be the entire base of what you have to actually start to uncover. Now, the second reason why women will not respect you unless you are able to position yourself if you are a challenge is because pre-selected men are hard to contact. They are harder to get a hold of. And number 3, they very rarely give out attention. Okay? So actually think about this for a second and break this down with me. When I say hard to contact, what does that mean? That means he probably does not text message back super fast. He's probably a bit distant. Okay? And on top of that, he is probably entertaining other options. So when you read that first part, pre-selected men are hard to contact, you have to understand, this is the best story, or the best illusion I like to paint. Let's say you were king of the land 1,000 years ago. You're literally a king, let's say. And let's say you looked over the land and you made sure that the whole community was taken care of. You had very high social status, okay? Would that man be easy to contact? The answer is no. So pre-selected men who potentially have options, since you're only one person and can typically only talk to or entertain one person at a time in real life, pre-selected men are hard to contact, even harder to get a hold of, and very rarely give out attention. So what that means is she literally sees if you start to check those boxes, okay, and you're positioning yourself as a challenge, what's going to happen is she values you more, okay? Scarcity and value have an inverse relationship. So this is what you have to remember is if there's a million guys out there hoping and praying to get a date, how do you position yourself as a guy who could potentially get dates or as a guy who potentially is actually able to attract women? You put scarce, limited access on your time, resources, and attention. And as she sees that she has to work slowly to earn that from you, as she sees that you don't just give that out freely, as she sees that you are probably spending that time, energy, effort, attention, and resources elsewhere, naturally she wants you to start to give that time, energy, emphasis, and resources towards her. Okay, so now what's going to happen is your attention is positioned higher. I'll give you an easier example to break that down. If you have 5 watches, let's say really expensive watches, okay? And let's say there's only 5 of them made in this specific brand with this specific type or these specific diamonds in them or whatever, okay? There's only 5 of them in the whole world made. They are naturally going to have more value than this watch brand over here where there's a million of them made every single year and you can buy them anywhere. Because they're a scarce supply, there is more value here. So people will pay more to have that specific watch. The same goes for your attention. Since women optimize for hypergamy, they want the best, which means, sure, they'll gladly take the attention from all the men who give it to them, sure. But they really, 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 really want the attention from that one specific guy who's probably not giving her any. And this is how you actually start to position yourself as a guy with real pre-selection value who actually has something going on for himself in his life. To break down point number 2 even further for you, the truth is you're probably just too available. And that's going to be the number one biggest sign that she sees you don't have a lot of options is if you're too available and you're easy to get a hold of. If you reply at every single text message, if you are very, let's say, in a scarcity mindset, let's say if you have low options, let's say if she can tell that you're really needing intimacy or connection with somebody, it's going to turn her off. Now, the guy who, let's say, forgets to reply to her, the guy who takes 3, 4, 5 days to reply, the guy who doesn't even reply sometimes, that's going to be the guy who's obviously has other things going on. She's going to feel like she's not as much of a priority compared to the other guys who text her back right away. And because of that, since he's not available, she wants him. So the biggest reason why most men just position themselves incorrectly is because you're too available. You're too accessible. You're too accessible for dates. You're too accessible for phone calls. You're too accessible for time, energy, and resources. And she can have you whenever she wants you. And because of that, she doesn't want you. Okay? And you got to understand, what we're talking about here when I say women don't respect men who are not a challenge is we are talking about psychological leverage of positioning. You can be 6'5" with $1 million and a fancy car and be very handsome and all this stuff. But if you're very accessible, if she sees that you are willing to just go see her whenever, if she sees that you're willing to text message her back instantly, if she sees that every single time she talks to you, you have sky-high interest and your whole face just lights up with happiness, she's going to see that you are not used to having a lot of options and you're just too available. So you being too available ruins the hypergamy experience for a woman of her actually feeling as if she's with a man that she truly desires. So that's number 2. Now, number 3, when dating women, she is constantly analyzing your SMV, your sexual market value, and wondering if you are on her level. So here's what you have to understand. At face value, off pure attraction, just at face value, a woman is not necessarily able to fully gauge your sexual market value. She doesn't know exactly where you're at, right? Because it's different, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it. So when dating women, okay, she is constantly analyzing your sexual market value and wondering if you are on her level. And what that means is she's constantly wondering, can I do better? Can I get a more attractive man? Can I get a man with higher status? Can I get a man who's more pre-selected by other women? Can I get a man who makes more money? Can I get a man who has more survival value than who I have right now? So when dating, she is constantly analyzing your sexual market value and the things that you bring to the table, because she is analyzing and wondering if you are on her level. And this is why I titled the video, Women Do Not Respect Men Who Are Not a Challenge, because if you are not a challenge, she instantly questions if she can do better. Now, this ties back to my earlier point from months ago when I was explaining to you that hypergamy is a feeling. So even if you have high sexual market value on paper, you check every box. You have resources, you have good looks, you dress well, you have all these things going for you. If you lack some of the framing, some of the masculine characteristics that go into masculine frame, the ability to position yourself to where a woman qualifies to you and has to fit certain criteria to be in your life, if you neglect those things and you are won over just off beauty alone, if you are sold on her just from looks alone, if you think she's so attractive just by how beautiful she is, and that is your one deciding factor for if you're going to consistently give time, energy, and attention to this woman, you're going to be in for a rude awakening when she starts to pull away. So that's what you have to understand with point number 3. When dating women, she is constantly analyzing your sexual market value and wondering if you are on her level. If you can position this psychologically where you flip this and then you ask the question and you say, hey, is she on my level, right? If you operate from that frame, meaning you're not super accessible, you don't give out attention very easily. You make sure that you put your time, energy, mindset, attention, and resources into leveling up your own self. This is what you're going to find too. The more you just focus in life on leveling up your sexual market value, the more attention you give to yourself, the more attractive you become, which means naturally they pursue you. Naturally, they give you more of their attention. All of the nice guy patterns that turn them off, those are the exact patterns that they give towards the guys who they genuinely want. Now, point number 4, she subconsciously desires to chase a man's approval and a man's validation. So when I say chase a man's approval and a man's validation, you have to understand just how seriously this point is. When a woman likes a guy, you have no idea, unless you've been in this situation, how powerful this is. She will pursue him to the end and back. She will give her all to him. I have seen women, when they have high enough desire for a guy, they will consistently do things for him. They will try to be as sweet as possible towards him. They will constantly ask him different things if she can help him out in any way. She subconsciously desires to chase a man's approval and a man's validation. Why? Because she wants that attention. She wants to feel desired. But what you have to understand is because of hypergamy, if you give that away too quickly, she cannot value it. Anything that is won over too easy has no value. Scarcity and value have an inverse relationship. So the proof of this is you have to look at what they respond to, because she will tell you, oftentimes with her words, the polar opposite of what she's going to respond to. Okay, so what that means is when she tells you things like, I want a guy who's there for me all the time. I want a guy who will consistently call me back all the time. I want a guy who consistently will take me out on dates all the time. I want a guy who's going to be there for me and who I know isn't talking to any other girls and all of that stuff. But what happens is if you fall into that trap, you will watch her pull away. She senses no value there. And on top of that, she's going to sense low competency on your end because you've believed her words, you've trusted her words, and now what she's responding to is something completely different because she's going where the value is. So what you have to understand is the man who makes it hard for the woman to earn the attention is the man who has the most value. And that's what she wants, is she wants to win over that guy's approval. You can tie this back to anything. If it's easy to hit a 225-pound bench press, guys wouldn't feel excited once they do it. But most guys, when they finally do 2 plates on bench press, they feel excited. If you look at your favorite video game, whatever it was probably really hard to beat. And then once you finally beat the whole game, you really liked that game because what happened was it was a challenge. Anything in life that's a challenge, that someone has to work for it, they value more when they get to the other side of victory. The same goes for dating. And that's why pre-selected men, you have to think of it this way. The reason why I always say if you were king of a land from 1,000 years ago, and let's say you had however many women that were after you, trying to be with you, trying to be the queen, if you were the king, if you had all of them seeking you, well, how would you move and how would you operate? You wouldn't be able to give them a lot of time or attention because your attention would be spread out, constantly exercising your options. You wouldn't even be able to speak to them frequently because there's probably a lot of people trying to speak to you. So when you position yourself as a person with a lot of value, naturally she wants to come into that world. And point number 5, like I said, this stems into pre-selection through the base of all of this. Point number 5, women only trust what other women see value in. What you're going to find is that women will oftentimes mimic what other women are doing when it comes to the dating preferences that they're choosing. So women naturally trust what other women see value in. That is the whole backbone of pre-selection. So being a challenge gets her to assume that you have options. She's going to say, well, hey, he must have women in his life already who are just as beautiful as me. He must have women in his life who are just as attractive as me. He must already have women in his life who are meeting his needs romantically. He must already have different women in his life that he's giving attention to or taking out on dates. And because of that, she feels as if that you are potentially on her level and she is potentially on your level, which means now you're a true candidate to potentially be with her. And see, this is the whole psychological framing shift you have to actually take on as a man, is you have to say, is this woman qualified to be with me? How much value am I bringing to the table? If a woman were to have access to me, how would her life change for the better that she can't get anywhere else? And it's not until you start to ask yourself those questions on a deeper level that you can actually find some true self-worth and self-confidence, because you know what you bring to the table. And this right here is why women do not respect men who are not a challenge. Now, as you guys have been seeing, I have been helping so many men master the language of women. So one of the guys in our community, he made this title, this headline, and it really caught my attention. He said, applying language of women on a tall blonde model. So when I saw that, like, just stick with me for a second, because this is awesome to read something like this. This is a real message. Like, this actually happened in my community. Do you know how cool it is to see that over 500 guys joined this, and I literally get messages like this? He goes, yesterday I went on a date with a tall blonde model and tested the learnings from language of women. He says, for the context, this girl comes from an elite aristocrat family and only dates super successful and high status guys. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is cool. This guy used language of women to position his value good enough, or the right way, to where he was actually in that group of men. So even though she has access to all these guys that are super high status, the things he was doing positioned his value where he was now a potential option for her, because that's the amount of value she saw in him. So keep that in mind. He goes on to say, she showed me how she constantly gets invitations to yachts, helicopters, private mansions from footballers, Forbes 30 under 30 guys, and some famous people with millions of followers. Okay, this woman is probably stunningly gorgeous. This woman is probably amazing and very attractive, so keep that in mind. He says, this was new behavior for me. So he used language of women that I teach. He uses the language of women methods to now exercise new behavior. Well, language of women for him is probably new information. The saying that I live by is new information, new decision. You can't make new decisions for how you're going to grow in your dating life unless you have new information to help guide you properly. So he says, this was new behavior for me. He goes on to say, I am excited to try it out. He says, my plan for the next 6 months is to add 20 to 25 super attractive women like this, so that not only I have abundance, but also they are constantly seeking my validation and in chasing frame. So here's what happens. When most guys get done with a first date, especially from a woman who's very attractive like this, most guys will run into this situation right here. They never hear from her again. If they do text message her, she doesn't reply. And even if they say, had a great date, would love to take you out again sometime or get to know you more, a lot of times she will wait a couple days and then text you back and say, not really interested, or I think you're a great guy, but the problem is that I just don't see myself with you, or I think you're a great guy, but I just don't think we're on the same path, or something like that. And all that is her saying in a polite way, I'm not as attracted to you as I thought I was. In his situation, the polar opposite happened. He goes, as soon as she reached home, she then started asking me questions. Should I post these pictures? Is it okay if I post them? He goes, thanks, Casey Zander. So why is she asking him questions like, is this a good picture or not? Or should I post these? What she is wanting is she is wanting his opinion, because she's wanting in some way, shape, or form that man to lead her. So because of that, now she's asking him questions. She's wanting to engage further into his life. And this is why he says thanks. So I see stuff like this. This is real. So a lot of people, when they see me, they're like, oh, I see you on camera, or you're a guy with a microphone, and it feels a bit out of touch because you don't know me in real life, obviously. You just watch me on these videos. But the thing is like, I'm a real guy just like you, right? And when I watch real guys actually come into this and their dating life changes, it's so cool to see. And it makes me have a lot of happiness and joy to create these videos and keep doing this for you guys, because I see the results that it's actually making. So we've had hundreds of guys enter into this community for a reason, and it's because I truly believe it's one of the best things I've ever created.